One and only here with another exciting video. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about top 10 games you can play in your head by yourself, second edition. That is a mouthful, way too many words for a title. And it is a very silly title. We can kind of talk more about why I think the title is silly in a second. In case you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is a book that came out back in February of 2019, late February, February 27th to be exact. Here is the About section of the book to give you some context. Your mind is now the ultimate game engine. Top 10 games you can play in your head by yourself is a collection of visionary author J. Theophrastus Bartholomew's most cherished mind games, edited and updated by filmmaker and storyteller Sam Gorski and author D.F. Lovett. No peripherals needed, no controllers, no pins, no dice or boards. Everything you need to experience the forefront of game design is right here between these pages. What is a mind game? Great question. A mind game is a game where you control the characters, the world, and everything in between. A breathtaking living story, a story that you can create on your own and come back to time after time. A story with surprises that you will plant for yourself and find later, and never be the wiser. What will happen in your game? It's up to you to find out. So that's like the base premise of top 10 games you can play in your head by yourself, second edition. Long title. The reason why the title is so long, for anyone who's wondering why they would ever title a book like this, is because supposedly the original series of books created by J. Theophrastus Bartholomew, who I'm just going to call J. Bart from now on, was called Games You Can Play in Your Head by Yourself, and then each one was like a numbered volume. And this is supposed to be like a top 10 collection of the games from his volumes, which supposedly he made thousands of games, but no one's ever heard of this guy. And if you try to look him up or his book series up, you can't really find anything about him. It's a whole thing, it's a whole mess. Real quick, I'm going to turn up the brightness on my phone, just make it easier for me to see. Hey, there we go. Ba-da-ba. But yeah, now that I've kind of gone over what top 10 games you can play in your head is about, let's talk about some interesting tidbits about the game. I am going to read the foreword because the foreword tells you a lot about the background of the game, and I do think that background is important. Ritu just hopped into the live chat and said, "Hey, what's doing? Hey, welcome to the live chat. Good to have you on the stream." I'm talking about top 10 games you can play in your head by yourself, which is a book that was published in February of 2019. It's essentially a solo role playing game. Ritu asked, "Where are you from?" Rocket City, Alabama. Shout out anyone from Rocket City. So let's hop into the foreword of the book. It'll give us some context about the people who made the book and why they made the book. So the foreword starts by them saying, "We did not write this book, although we wish we did. It all began in the summer of 2014 when the two of us, Sam and David, discovered 6 volumes of the first edition of J. Bart's Games You Can Play in Your Head by Yourself at a yard sale in Bayport, Minnesota. To clarify, we did not discover 6 copies of the book. We discovered 6 of the 14 volumes of the original book series, a sprawling out of print game series produced by a defunct publisher in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The books fascinated us. Here in our hands was something so similar to many of our favorite things: role playing games, tales of adventure, murder mysteries, fantasy epics, but with an entirely different approach than anything we'd seen before. Instead of gathering your friends for a night of pizza and dragon slaying in the basement, these books urge you to isolate yourself as you dive into your own mind. The first thing we did, of course, was divvy up the books and start playing the games ourselves. But soon we realized 2 things. The first was that we could find no other imprint of these games upon the world. The libraries and game stores and bookshops had all never heard of them. Even our scourings of the internet turned over no stones. This led to our second realization: we could not keep these games from the world. But with so many volumes of games, where would we begin? After contacting the game maker's publisher, we acquired a list of his 10 personal favorite games, along with an introduction he had created for an unpublished volume. 10 games that challenged us, 10 games that surprised us, 10 games that changed us for better or worse. Again, we wish we were the authors of this book. Alas, we are but editors. And instead of further editorializing or describing the following book, it's time for you to jump right in. Enjoy the journey into this book and into yourself. Jamie Mentor said, hey, Jamie, welcome. Good to have you on the stream. And then Boston Bruin fan 8, I'm just going to call you Boston. You said, do you like the Bruins hockey team? Not familiar with the Bruins hockey team. Feel free to tell me more about it. And also, thank you guys for the likes. Really appreciate it. Now, why did I go through all this time to read the foreword of this book? Like, what was the point of me doing that? It's because there's a lot of controversy about the forward of the book. A lot of people don't believe the story about there being this collection of books that no one can find any information about, but these guys happen to find at a yard sale. There's actually a negative Amazon review for this book where someone criticizes the fact that they're like, this whole backstory is just made up. And they just kind of hate that the book is based on a lie, which is an interesting concept, to be honest. Like, it's an interesting reason to not like a book because you think that the origins of the book are false. Rodney Williams said subscribed. Hey, thank you, Rodney Williams. Appreciate it. So I personally choose to believe that this is like a real mystery of like, who is this J Bart guy? Why is it that you can't find any information about J Bart on the internet? Why is it that other people can't find these volumes? It's genuinely fascinating, and I am interested in trying to get to the bottom of this. If you're watching this video and you happen to know anything about J Bart and the origins of these books, definitely let me know. I would love to like do a video talking about that in more depth. Rodney Williams said, "You're welcome." Hey, thanks. So enough about that particular point of the controversy. Let's hop into one of the most interesting testimonials in the book and my perspective on that testimonial. So this testimonial is for a game called Another Life, which, don't worry, we're going to talk about Another Life in a second. But it's the very last testimonial included in the entire book, and I find it very gripping. So this testimonial is written by Danny G, and he said, I lived as a nomad in the desert for 17 years, but when I woke up, I found it was only 2 days in real time. What happened was that I forgot how to snap myself out of the game, went on a search for answers, ended up getting lost in an infinite desert, where I eventually found an imaginary copy of the book. When I opened it, I expected to find some sort of instructions on how to wake up, but it was blank. The shock of hopelessness was actually so severe that it snapped me out of it, saving my life. Now, there are a few different ways that you can approach this testimonial. You could approach the testimonial as a legitimate overview of someone's experience playing the game, which, if you do, that implies that this game is so immersive and crazy that you can find yourself lost in another world and unable to wake up from it, almost like you're a character in an isekai anime or something, right? But you could also potentially interpret this testimonial as just a reference to a trailer for the game. See, despite the fact that this game is just one of many inside of a book of games and isn't like a video game or something, they actually did make a trailer for top 10 games you can play in your head by yourself. And in that trailer, they have Danny Gonzalez. Danny G, Danny Gonzalez. And in the trailer, it shows him getting stuck inside of this like desert world as he's playing one of the games. So this could just be a tongue-in-cheek reference to him being stuck in the desert inside of the trailer for the game, or you can take it at face value as a legitimate testimonial for what happened to a real person whose name is Danny G who played the game, or you could even take a best of both worlds approach and say that Danny Gonzalez really did play the game and really did get stuck inside of a desert for a prolonged period of time in the game. And then they built the trailer around that, and the testimonial is about his real experience. The way that you could get to the bottom of this is just to talk to Danny Gonzalez. Just ask him, like, hey, is that a thing that like really happened to you, or is that just like a reference to the trailer or something? This you could easily find an answer for, maybe. But if Danny Gonzalez says it wasn't him and like it's not talking about him, then it creates like a new mystery of like, who is the real Danny G, and is this like a real review or like an exaggerated review kind of thing. So that's just another neat mystery about the game that I wanted to share with you guys in this video. But now that we're like over 10 minutes into the video. Let's dive into the game that I want to talk about. Really, the only game in this collection of 10 games that I've really paid a lot of attention to and have enjoyed, and that's called Another Life. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a secret. While this book is a collection of 10 different games, arguably almost all of the games are just Another Life, but like more specifically themed than Another Life is. For example, the very first game in the book, if you don't count like the tutorial game, is called Adventure. And it's essentially a game where you play as like an Indiana Jones type character or a character in a world similar to Indiana Jones, and you go on an adventure, right? But Another Life is kind of like a role playing game that doesn't have a set setting that you have to be in or a specific character that you have to play as. You kind of decide all those things for yourself and then you hop into the game. So let me read you the rules for Another Life. There are only four rules, and honestly, you could describe the entire game in like a couple sentences or so. So, rule number one, you have to choose a life that you want to live. Rule number two, you have to take that life for yourself. Essentially, commit yourself to imagining that you are really living out that life. Rule number three, live that life until a logical conclusion has been reached or you have learned a life lesson. A logical conclusion could be that you accomplish a specific goal that you're trying to achieve, or your character dies, which would be a logical conclusion to someone's life. Or for the life lesson, that one's pretty self explanatory. If you learn something valuable through your experience, like the value of do not steal or something like that, then that can be a good, satisfying conclusion for your session. And then finally, step number four is to firmly eject yourself from that other life. Stop imagining your fantasy life and really lock in and focus on the reality around you. Now, those are all the rules to Another Life. And the rule section that explains all this is like very short and sweet, but the book does give you additional prompts for how to come up with what other life you want to live. And it gives you options of different, like, pre made life concepts. Like if you want to be a famous athlete or a popular musician or the Pope or a character called Old Sly Willie or a tiger, etc., etc. It also brings up the idea of maybe you want to play as yourself, but from like a parallel universe, which is an interesting concept. It also gives you information on how to really commit yourself to imagining yourself in this other world and gives you like additional prompts and information and things like that. It gives you a list of logical conclusions, like examples of goals that you could strive for or ways that your character could potentially like die, which would end the game, as well as a list of life lessons that you could learn while playing the game that would also work as a logical conclusion. But throughout all of this, all these rules and prompts and things to get you going, they keep reinforcing the idea that this game is dangerous and that this game is not like the other games in the book. There's a specific section called Don't Lose the Horizon. And in this section, it says the realm of shadows is elusive, but when found, it can be so seductive that many who enter it never return. The greatest danger in any of my games is that you lose yourself and never find your way back to reality. Like Theseus in the labyrinth, you must always keep one hand on your ball of twine if you are ever to retrace your steps and escape. Please be careful. Do not disappear so far into another life, or any of my thousands of games, that you're unable to return. If you play this game right, you will walk back into your life with a sense of optimism and joy. If you play it wrong, you could live in another life forever. So I actually really enjoy Another Life. I would say in the past couple days, I probably have played it like eight, nine, or 10 times. Like I have been playing it quite a bit. Maybe eight, nine, or 10 is a stretch. I maybe have played it like half that many times. I've probably played it like 5 times already within like the last couple days. It's a lot of fun. It can be fairly immersive, and it's a very simple RPG system. And like they say on the back of the book, you don't need any dice or boards. You just play it in your head straight. It's good game, good game. I actually highly recommend that people play Another Life. But beyond just Another Life being a good game, it's also a game that has really sparked my imagination and inspired me personally. I've been writing stories about people playing another life and getting trapped inside of the game, or playing another life and then finding things from their other life appearing in their real life, like in their reality, and them having to deal with that. I think it's a really cool premise. And like I said before, it's very similar to a lot of isekai anime that are like really popular with characters finding themselves trapped in some other world, but it's like the real version of like an isekai anime. And it's not that you need some kind of portal or time machine or nerve gear headset or something like that. You just need this simple set of rules and you really can find yourself immersed in some other world. Now, whether or not it's a situation where you get trapped in that other world, who's to say? There's that one testimonial from Danny G where he claims that he got trapped in another world. But again, we could take that testimonial with a grain of salt. And then there are all the warnings in the book about, like, don't get trapped in another world while you're playing the game. Do we take those warnings seriously? Who knows? One thing that all of this stuff reminds me of is shifting. Do you guys remember shifting? Back during the pandemic in like 2020, a lot of people got really into this idea that you could send your consciousness to some other universe or reality, and you could live out like your desired reality or DR. This reminds me a lot of what people would say about shifting, like conceptually. But whereas people would talk about reality shifting as like they believe is like a real thing, like you actually are sending your consciousness to some other universe, this isn't trying to make any kind of metaphysical claim that you are truly sending yourself to like another world. It's presenting itself as a game, but then it talks about it as if there's like a real risk. Like, ooh, you're playing this game where you imagine yourself in another reality, but you can actually get stuck in that other reality or whatever. And I find that just really interesting. I'd be curious to see how people who are in the shifting community, or people who are actively trying to shift, because there's like a large subreddit that's like all about people who believe in reality shifting and are trying to reality shift themselves. I wonder if you were to present them with this game, if they would see it as like, oh, this is a method for shifting, or if they would see it as like, oh, it's like wannabe shifting or whatever. And you may be thinking to yourself that there's like a weird comparison. And you may be like, why am I bringing up like shifting in the first place? A couple different reasons. For one, some people have reviewed this game and the games within this book series as kind of being like a lucid dreaming RPG. And I understand where they're coming from. If you've been paying attention to the channel, I've been really into dreaming and making dream art and songs based on my dreams and animations based on my dreams. And lucid dreaming is very similar to what you do in another life, where you're in control of your character, but things just kind of happen as you're imagining the scenario. Like things just kind of play out, and you don't feel entirely in control of all those things as they play out. When you get into a flow of playing the game, characters will just kind of naturally do what you would expect them to do. um, and it may even defy your expectations on what they end up doing next. But it doesn't feel like you have to puppet each and every character. The game kind of goes on autopilot to a certain degree. Similar to when you're in a lucid dream, you don't necessarily control each of the individual dream characters consciously. They just kind of are doing their own thing while you're doing your own thing. So lucid dreaming and reality shifting are commonly compared with one another, with some people saying that all reality shifting is just people lucid dreaming, and other people who are like really into reality shifting believe it's like its own thing entirely or whatever. I would argue that if you want to say that like lucid dreaming is its own thing and reality shifting is its own thing, that you could introduce another life as like another one of those things where they're all somewhat similar to one another, but they all kind of have like distinct differences. But if you wish to ignore those differences, you could kind of argue that they're all kind of doing the same thing. But whereas lucid dreaming has many different techniques that you can try, and it's difficult to get a lucid dream each and every night, and some people only lucid dream like once a month or once or twice a month or once a year, or they never have lucid dreams. And whereas reality shifting seems to be a thing that people struggle with for years to try and figure out, like if they can reality shift or not. And some people are skeptical about whether or not that's even a real phenomenon. Another life just is real. Another life is like an actual game that you can play with very simple rules, only has like four rules, and you can play it with no materials at all. So if you're into lucid dreaming, or if you're interested in something like reality shifting, and you want to be able to experience that with all the like rigmarole of complicated techniques for either of those things, you could just play another life. Like I bring all this up to essentially give it as a recommendation. If you or someone you know is interested in lucid dreaming or reality shifting, but find either of those things to either be impossible or just extremely difficult to do, try another life. Just try playing that game, which you can find in Top 10 Games You Can Play by Yourself, second edition, which is available now on Amazon. I'm going to post in the description below an affiliate link that you guys can check out from Amazon, essentially making this kind of become like a sponsored video, more or less. So feel free to click on that affiliate link. It'll help support the channel. Like I said, I will post it. I haven't posted it during this current live broadcast, but if you buy the book using that link, it'll help to support the channel. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate all the likes and getting a subscription. And yeah, thank you guys for dropping by. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are of the game. And let me know if you know where to find the original game books that this game is based off of. Anyways, thank you again. This is your host, friend, your boy, Jeff Like One Only, logging out. Peace, guys. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. Check it about.